Soulmates, thank you so much for joining us in this Tuesday discussion. Lots to chat about inside of FOXSOUL's Black Report. We're following the latest in the run for the White House and what black candidates we could see on the ballot. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nichols Corte, plus the clothing store that's paying nearly $10 million in a racial discrimination lawsuit. They're the stories that impact our people.
We're going to continue to bring you our news, our views, and our voice. So let's get into our top conversation for today, taking us to Florida. As a mother, 35-year-old Ajike Owens met a fatal end when she was shot while standing at her neighbor's door. This happened in Ocala. Her 9-year-old son was present as the violent culmination of a 2.5-year-long feud unfolded. The Marion County Sheriff says that the shooter, who remains unidentified, had previously yelled at Owens' children and even threw skates at them. Owens' family's attorney, Benjamin Crump, alleges that racial slurs were directed at the children. The sheriff's office is currently investigating potential self-defense claims under Florida's Stand Your Ground law, while Owens' grieving family seeks justice for their loss.
Awful, awful, awful. 4 children in Florida without their mother because of this really senseless act of violence. The sheriff pointed out that, again, because of Florida's Stand Your Ground law, and if that sounds familiar to our soulmates, it's because that was the law that George Zimmerman used to sort of justify, his self-defense actions sort of against Trayvon Martin. We have seen this law used and misused in a number of states. And Courtney, I'm struck by just sort of the similarities between this case and the Ralph Yarl case in Missouri, in Kansas City. The fact that this woman shot another mom through the door.
A closed door.
While her kids were standing there. What is happening?
Yeah. I don't know, does that shake the foundation of the Stand Your Ground law? I mean, this perpetrator was behind a closed door. This mom was knocking, on a door. Lots of reports have come out to say that she was retrieving one of her child's belongings that this neighbor had, and there was a knock on the door, and that bullet came through that closed door. So I've always wondered, does that really stand when it comes to this Stand Your Ground, a law down in Florida, which has a tendency to become very convoluted from case to case. And so, of course, we want immediate action. We want immediate consequences. But if it takes authorities down there to take a moment to investigate all of the facts and then hopefully come up with some sort of charge, much like in the case in New York where that Marine was not immediately charged, with Ben Crump there, I feel confident that something will take place. I just think they want to take their time and hopefully get it right. But in the mean and in between, you have a child who has watched their mother be killed. And later on down the line, as they seek justice, will that baby, have to recall that moment and be put on the stand? There's just so much to take in and talk about. But in the mean and in between, this 35-year-old mom is gone, and these children are without a mother.
That's right. That's right. And if we can't get rid of these Stand Your Ground laws, we have to seriously reform these Stand Your Ground laws. Because if people are allowed to shoot through their front door at somebody that they suspect
that's a problem,
may cause harm to them, that is a major problem.
Major.
Moving along, social media is mourning the 30th birthdays of Breonna Taylor and Tyre Nichols, both victims of fatal encounters with the police. Breonna Taylor, a dedicated, aspiring nurse, was shot during a botched no-knock raid in her Louisville apartment. Tyre Nichols, a young father, was beaten to death by officers during a traffic stop in Memphis. The community is determined to honor their lives and demand justice for the unfair treatment of black individuals by the police. Tributes and events, including a celebration with live music, food trucks, and a skate park tribute, are being held to remember their legacies.
And Monday would have been specifically Breonna's 30th birthday, a time when you should be celebrating a milestone. And God bless her mother, who is still fighting the good fight. They took the moment to introduce a campaign down there in Kentucky, in Louisville, Kentucky. It's called the Stop Cameron campaign. That is the Attorney General who seemed to have gotten in the way of justice. A lot of folks feel like he mishandled the Breonna Taylor case, but they're going to train people to canvass, to train them in election procedures. in hopes to unseat this attorney general. And it just speaks to the wide stretch of this Breonna Taylor case and how this family continues to honor her legacy with a different approach with bringing about justice. It's unseating the people who they feel they didn't get justice from.
That's right. And you know what? It's great that the community is working together to make sure that their lives are not in vain, that their deaths, mean something.
Right.
And that something meaningful comes out of the tragedy here. We know that there are a lot of eyes on the Memphis Police Department right now, including the Department of Justice, looking at patterns and practices there. We know that the Tyre Nichols case really also helped to spark a conversation about these special units in police departments across the country. We talked about the Scorpion unit in Memphis that was that was a part of his death. And so lots of possible reforms, but you're right. Daniel Cameron, who's running for governor of Kentucky, for everybody that understands the injustice of Breonna Taylor, time to organize and mobilize and make your voice known in that upcoming election.
Isn't it sickening? You were just mentioning all those cases. Isn't it sickening how they're happening still so frequently that you can barely keep up with them? I mean, this situation down with the mom in Florida just blew me away. And, as journalists, we're in the thick of it, but it just overwhelms me to have to keep up with all of these cases and the fallout. It's just devastating.
And look at how much stuff is coming out of Florida.
Yeah.
I mean, how many stories need to come out of Florida before we say, wait a minute, is that really who we want to be as a country, right? And so, right now you have Ron DeSantis running for president. Running for the Republican nomination for president. And, he hasn't been shy about saying he wants to make America Florida.
Yeah.
Well, depending on a lot of the cases that we're reporting on, is that something that we really want?
You mentioned police reform. Let's go to Atlanta, where the city council has granted funding for the construction of a police and firefighter training center, despite opposition from activists who refer to it as Cop City. The 11-4 vote in the early hours of Tuesday morning marks a significant win for Mayor Andre Dickens, who sees the $90 million project as crucial for enhancing public safety. The council also passed a resolution requesting representation on the Atlanta Police Foundation's board. While supporters believe the center will improve training and higher efforts, there are opponents who argue that it will lead to increased police militarization and environmental damage. The decision follows intense public debates and protests at City Hall.
Now, Courtney, I was a little surprised that after 14 hours and hundreds of protesters that attended this Atlanta City Council meeting, I was surprised at the vote. It wasn't even close. It was an 11-4 vote just after 5 a.m. To your point, a very significant victory for the mayor of Atlanta. And, there are a lot of people, not just in Atlanta, but across the country, that see this as an inflection point in the movement for police reform, right? They're creating this $90 million facility, which was approved last year. This was the vote for the budget, of which case a significant portion will be paid by the city of Atlanta, but a larger portion will be paid by private donations, et cetera. This is an inflection point. This will be a major part of the legacy of the mayor of Atlanta.
Yeah, but I was tapping into Black radio down in Atlanta, and there were a lot of residents calling in and saying, a lot of them just disagreed. And then the ones who sort of kind of wanted to support it just did not understand it must be in some sort of residential area. They're very upset about where the plans to construct this facility will be, and they're saying with all the, blight in Atlanta and the vacant, acreage, if you will, why not put it somewhere where, it wouldn't, affect or disrupt, residential areas and their day-to-day living. So, there's a lot of different aspects to this argument. All eyes on Atlanta, because this may be the forefront in how you go about, reforming, if you will, police and that culture.
You're right.
Look at that culture.
You're right. This facility is being built in a large urban forest.
Yeah.
In a poor majority Black area, right? And so Black folks are feeling the impact of this on both ends, that loss of that area, but also this major investment in law enforcement and the militarization of police in Atlanta. Well, Republicans in Texas, Missouri, and Mississippi are facing backlash as they attempt to seize control from heavily Democratic cities of color. In Texas, GOP-led legislation aims to eliminate the elections administrator position in Harris County, granting state officials authority over elections. Critics argue that these measures suppress votes and intimidate communities, harkening back to the Jim Crow era. Democrats are concerned about the impact on future elections, including the 2023 Houston mayoral election and the 2024 presidential election. Harris County officials are prepared to sue if Governor Greg Abbott signs the controversial legislation into law.
And let's take a look at a recent poll that says 49% of respondents expressed openness to voting for a third-party candidate if President Biden and former President Trump faced each other again in 2024. Now, among potential third-party candidates, Senator Bernie Sanders received the highest support at 21%, followed by former Representative Liz Cheney at 10% and Senator Joe Manchin at 7%. Among others, an additional 43% of respondents favored someone else as a third-party candidate. Now, the poll indicates a growing dissatisfaction with both Biden and Trump, leading to speculation about the emergence of a third-party challenger.
Yeah, I just think that there's some discontent out there. There's a lot of discontent out there. There aren't a lot of candidates out there that are new, that are, bringing forth new ideas. And I think the idea of Trump and Biden facing off again, 2020 already had us on the edge of our seats. That was a very close election in terms of the popular vote, not in terms of the electoral vote. And I think a lot of people, don't have an appetite, for that sort of contest again. And so, we're going to see what happens. But remember what can happen sometimes when there are third-party candidates in presidential election. Think back to 2000 when Ralph Nader was running for president. There are a lot of people that say that, he siphoned off votes, not from George W. Bush, but from Al Gore.
It reminds me of my mother who left us in 2016. And traditionally, she was a Democrat. But, she experienced voter fatigue very early on. So her last presidential election, she was leaning towards independent because she just wasn't impressed, either way. My dad was a traditional Republican in the sense of a Colin Powell type of a Republican, which is very different from what's happening now. However, I just remember being influenced by how turned off she was. And she would always entertain that third party candidate prior to casting her vote. And I think folks are just tired, regardless of what side of the aisle you sit on. Folks are tired, and that is something that these politicians are going to have to take into consideration as they, stomp up and down and back and forth across this country, that folks are just tired of hearing the same old thing from the same old folks. So it'll be very interesting to see what they come up with.
Very interesting indeed.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of very interesting, philosophy professor and progressive activist Dr. Cornel West has launched his campaign for the 2024 presidential election under the banner of the People's Party. West's focus will be on health care, living wages, housing, reproductive rights, and combating environmental destruction and threats to democracy. In his announcement, he criticized President Biden as a, quote, milquetoast neoliberal and former President Trump as a, quote, neo-fascist. West aims to bring truth and accountability to Wall Street, Ukraine, the Pentagon, and big tech. The People's Party, founded in 2017, aims to establish a major progressive populist party in the country.
Oh, good old Dr. West. I had a chance during my D.C. days to sit down with him and your mentor, Tavis Smiley. They were, partnered together for a while to push a particular agenda. And I will say, quite the character. We had a few laughs. But I will say that his platform, I think definitely speaks to the immediate need of the American, in particular the Black American. However, I feel like his bid is more let's say, symbolic more so than anything really, really tangible or attainable. However, I do feel like there is some significance there, especially on the heels of this research saying folks are tired and they're looking for third-party alternatives. And he's a tell it like it is kind of person. He's on the younger end, the tail end of like that Dick Gregory generation, where it came out the way it came up, and I can appreciate that boldness. But it'll be interesting to see how this thing pans out and how much support he'll be able to garner.
Yeah, I mean, wherever you stand, I think the presidential contest has just gotten a little bit more interesting with him entering the race. I know that there are folks on the Democratic side that are concerned that a Cornel West presidential campaign does not hurt Trump. It will hurt Biden and may potentially siphon off enough voters that could be the margin of victory in this election. And so, third-party contenders, don't often win presidential contests, but they can have some effect in terms of who wins and who loses. And so a lot of people will be following this closely. I know we certainly will here at Fox Soul's Black Report.
We're going to check in to see how much of an effect this particular senator had during his appearance on The View. Senator Tim Scott faced boos and jeers from the studio audience after he praised Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his ongoing conflicts with Disney. Scott expressed support for DeSantis' stance on addressing children's indoctrination. Host Whoopi Goldberg intervened, reprimanding the audience for booing and reminding them of the show's policy to accept diverse viewpoints. Governor DeSantis has been actively criticizing Disney for what he considers a promotion of progressive ideology. When asked about government intervention in corporate policies on social issues, Scott suggested that individuals can make their voices heard by choosing where they shop.
Courtney, what is so interesting here, notice how everything related to diversity, equity, and inclusion is about being woke. It's about, quote unquote, indoctrination. And everything related to MAGA is about freedom and liberty, right? And so here we have, this black man from South Carolina whose life ain't been no crystal stair, who is running for president of the United States, is running for the GOP nomination. And, it felt like in this clip, from The View, that he couldn't even just sort of level with folks.
Well, you know what? I watched the clip yesterday because it started to go viral, and a lot of the back and forth was with him and Sonny. And I even heard that they kind of got into a little scuffle, a little argument during a commercial break. But on air, you could just tell that, he what he said is what he said, and how he feels is really how he feels. Now, he's a nice guy, and so he said these things very politely, but it was quite obvious that the audience was not in agreement with him. And so it'll be interesting to see, how, especially as, maybe black Republicans or just black folks, period, just looking at him as a candidate, how you can separate his politics from the life story, which I celebrate, but it's just the politics. And then you have to pay attention because he gives it to you in such a polite, mannerable way. And I think Sonny was trying to get at him and raise up a little bit, and he kept it very calm and cool. But a lot of folks in that audience obviously just did not agree with what he was saying.
And I think he's betting that's going to be his calling card, that
he's a
that
nice guy.
He can be Trumpy, because
nice.
he supports a lot of the same things that Trump and DeSantis supports. He just says it more nicely. Up next, North Carolina students are learning valuable lessons in high school. I love this story.
Yeah, this is a good one. We'll tell you what one historically black high school is doing for their students when we return. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report. And we welcome you back to Fox Soul's Black Report. Derek Johnson from the NAACP criticizes the debt ceiling deal for neglecting black Americans and prioritizing corporations and the wealthy.
That's right. He highlights weakened environmental protections, reduced IRS capacity, and burdensome requirements for public assistance. Johnson urges Congress to invest in programs that uplift marginalized communities instead of implementing work requirements.
The NAACP calls for an end to using the debt ceiling as a bargaining tool and demands deeper investments for black Americans.
Deeper investments indeed. I mean, look, folks that rely on SNAP benefits, folks that were doing a little bit better because their student loans were paused, they're going to be impacted by this. You know, the president had come out and had said, send me a clean bill to raise the debt ceiling, and we can negotiate the budget separately. Well, that didn't exactly happen. And the reality is, with a divided government, where Republicans control the purse strings, they control the House of Representatives, you know, the president could wish that all he wants, right? They get to decide how this is going to happen, and they did, and this is what we've been left with.
I don't want to sound pessimistic, but you know, what's new? You know, when have we not been, you know, the second-class citizen, or when have we not been, you know, holistically included in this thought of, you know, bettering this country for everybody? So, you know, the struggle and the push continues. And so, unfortunately, nothing surprising here. I think as a culture, as a community, as soulmates, we just have to, you know, arm ourselves with as much information as possible and really plug into, you know, these politics and these this election season and what these candidates have to say in regards to, you know, does it, you know, tap into our needs? Does it tap into us being heard? And, you know, this vicious cycle that we've, you know, always had to be a part of and protect ourselves from when it comes to blacks and economics. And we have the power. The research and the surveys and whatnot, statistics show that we have the power. I don't know if we're just falling short and pulling together or making sure we have the proper people in place to feel that trickle down. Well,
you know, we do have the power, and we do flex in elections. We just got to continue to flex, right? I mean, that's a part of what we've got to do to keep our democracy
intact. We can't tap in and then tap back out,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and not just on the presidential level, but on the local level. You know, mayors play an outsized role when it comes to police reform, right? And so we got to pay attention to, you know, who's running for mayor in our cities across the country. You know, but you know, this is a big deal. This is a big deal, and we know that it's within our power. There are about a handful of offices in the House of Representatives that control who's in power in the House, and we know with a handful more of senators, particularly black senators, in the Senate, it could make a big difference on these issues that Derek Johnson.
I like how you said it's within our power.
It sure is.
It's a good takeaway.
Moving along, a recent report finds persistent financial challenges for black Americans despite economic recovery. Over 57% have credit card debt, 32% carry student loans, and 28% have mortgages. Many feel overwhelmed by debt, causing stress and financial worries, and that urgent action is needed to address economic opportunities and wealth building for black communities. Immediate financial goals include eliminating living paycheck to paycheck and maintaining emergency funds. We ain't looking for much.
Yeah, but I think that's key right there. No, you know, I am looking for much. I'm looking for just as much care, concern, and consideration as other folks to have a tendency to get, more so than black folks. But I love those 2 points of interest. You know, the paycheck to paycheck. I mean, that is just survival. And sometimes when you're in survival mode, you just can't live. You know, and you get into this robbing Peter to pay Paul, which we know credit-wise and keeping up with bills, it throws you so far behind. You know, and then, you know, there's this study out that says, and I didn't have to read a study to know at times in my life, where when something pops off in your life, you don't even have any kind of, you know, recourse to sort of kind of address it. And they were talking about this $500, you know, cushion for emergencies. But when you know, trying to just live from day to day, and when a gallon of milk costs $25,000, you know, how are you going to save in order for, you know, some kind of rainy day or for some unforeseen mishap to happen in your life and be able to cover that? It is hard out here.
Yeah,
it really is.
It's hard out here. And the fact that 80%, this is according to the Joint Center study, 80% of black adults, they name not living paycheck to paycheck. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people, right? And so it's interesting that right now, like, we report on the state of our economy, you know, as doing well, right? You know, there are folks that wonder, are we in a recession? Are we not in a recession? Well, there are indicators that say that we're not technically in a recession. We have the lowest black unemployment since it's been recorded. Yet and still, you have 80% of black adults that name not living paycheck to paycheck and not worrying about monthly bills as
Mm-hmm.
one of their chief financial desires. There's a mismatch.
Yeah, it's like America, and then there's like this Black America, two different worlds, and there's obviously a disconnect for sure. All right, speaking of finances, Hillside High School in North Carolina has launched a student bank training center, a functioning bank on campus that prepares students for the future and promotes financial literacy. It is operated by Woodforest National Bank, and the branch offers services such as checking and savings accounts to students, staff, and families. It also provides internships for students enrolled in Hillside's Business and Finance Academy, offering practical experience. Now, the program has already made a positive impact on students' financial habits, such as the importance of saving. We just talked about that and how difficult it is to save.
I think this program is incredible.
It is
the impact
on fire.
of financial literacy, it's already being felt. One of the students that's gone through this program says that before she took the class, she used to spend money on fast food and a lot of pointless stuff. But Miss Ross, who I guess is the teacher in the program, showed us how to balance our money and how to save up.
Yeah.
These are lessons that will continue to serve our kids, that will continue to serve our communities, for many years to come, dare I say even generations to come, if we pass it down. And
you have to serve these students in real time. I know we have come across a lot of stories where the classroom is just off the chain, unfortunately. I think some of that starts with home. But you have to educate and expose these young people in real time. So programs like this, coupled with programs or bringing back the trades, and also making sure there are, extracurricular activities in place for these young people to tap into. I think that is the turnaround point, those type of resources. And for those resources to be implemented, we need the money.
Yeah.
So, listen, hopefully this program will continue to serve as a model, and it'll just catch fire, because I think it's necessary, it's appropriate, and it's the future, and the future is now. We're a little behind. Matter of fact, you asked me.
And I hope that members of Congress that are watching the Black Report, that staffers over at the the Department of Commerce and other important agencies are paying attention to this story. Because this student bank training center, this should be in every high school across the country.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Right?
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And so I just want to amplify that, because this is clearly making a big difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
An Ohio jury has awarded a $9.3 million settlement in damages to Elizabeth Cook, a former Black employee of Saks Fifth Avenue, who claimed that she was unfairly terminated due to racial discrimination. Cook alleged that her managers at the Columbus, Ohio store threatened her differently than her non-Black coworkers. The jury agreed with Cook's claim and granted her $2.3 million for lost wages and $7 million in punitive damages. Saks Fifth Avenue denied any wrongdoing, but expressed disappointment in the jury's decision and plans to appeal. Cook's lawsuit also highlighted instances of discriminatory punishment and racial profiling of Black shoppers at the store.
Yeah, I was a little sad, a little ticked to hear about this one. I love a Saks now. That's what we call it for short. So it's very unfortunate. And it's very reminiscent of the Equinox Gym story that we talked about not too long ago, where that young lady was able to also prove her case, and she got like $11 million and some other drippings, if you will. But here's the thing: isn't it unfortunate that sometimes you have to walk into these places of employment on the defensive or just prepared, to deal with some BS. You know what I'm saying? And obviously these ladies, had all their ducks in a row and were able to effectively prove their cases. But why does this always have to be the case? That's what I kind of bring it back to. And it's just very, unfortunate. But, good for these young ladies that they have like this reset. And hopefully, they'll move into areas, as far as their careers are concerned, where they can, not have to deal with such things.
Yeah. I was really moved by what the plaintiff said. She said the process helped restore the dignity I lost 5 years ago when I was unlawfully terminated by Saks Fifth Avenue. While I can understand that rogue managers and bad employees can lead to bad outcomes like mine, I still cannot fathom how how SAC's internal racial discrimination complaint process completely failed. And so, you know, that was the statement from the plaintiff. And, you know, think back to the story you just shared, you know, where SACS is like, well, we still don't think we did anything wrong, right? You know, SACS, you may want to take a look, you know, at what processes you have in place, what structures you have in place, and what culture you have in place that allow for any of this to happen in the
It's
first
coming to the
place.
point where if these, you know, if corporate folks, if they act up, you're going to have to pay up. That's the bottom line. All right, coming up, a 14-year-old is giving quite the middle school promotion present.
That's right. We'll tell you all he had to go through to get his graduation and how he's being rewarded. More on FOXSOUL's Black Report. Welcome back. A Florida judge is allowing a class action lawsuit to go forward that accuses the state of discriminating against a historically black university while prioritizing its largest public university, which is predominantly white.
Yep, the 6 students at Florida A&M who filed the suit claim that the University of Florida receives a larger state appropriation per student than FAMU. The complaint also says that for over 33 years, that's from 87 to 2020, 1987 to 2020, the shortfall amounted to approximately $1.3 billion, though the 2 schools share the distinction of being the state's only 2 public land grant colleges.
That's right. The suit also accuses the state of allowing Florida State University, also in Tallahassee, to duplicate more than 40 FAMU programs, making it difficult for FAMU to attract potential students through its fields of study.
Yeah, I smell a rat, and they were able to prove it, which is why this judge is allowing this class action suit to, you know, move through. And I think the one word that stood out for me throughout the article was chronic discrimination. I mean, when you look at those dates from 1987 to 2020, and that's just one area, if you will, or one time span, if you will, that they happen to be looking at. I would bet to believe that this has just been ongoing, you know, from you know, day one, maybe a different kind of way based upon where you are generationally speaking, or what's happening in the world. You look at TSU and that land grant situation and how they were able to, you know, get their couple $100 million that had been owed to them. And I think this all plays into that, the lie or the lies, if you will, that have been ongoing. You know, probably before 1987, and I'd bet to say.
And you're right, this is 33 years we're talking about, right? And I think you're absolutely right to point out, you know, the word systemic. You know, let's put that in all caps. Let's double click on that, because, you know, all the folks that are fighting for reparations across the country and around the world, might I add, you know, are alleging that there has been systemic discrimination against black folks, you know, and folks have got to do the work to make people whole, to make us whole, right? And so I really just major hat tip to these students for having the courage to be a part of this kind of lawsuit, to have the courage to hold the leaders in that state accountable, to invite other students who have had similar experiences to be a part of this class action lawsuit. And so we'll continue to keep our eyes on this, but this is a major story. And look, it's happening in where? Florida.
Yeah.
So for all those people running for office, trying to make America Florida, pay attention.
All right, let's head to Missouri, where Xavier Jones, a St. Louis teen, can now spend the next 4 years not stressing over how he'll pay for college after a 6-mile walk to receive his middle school diploma. The determined teen was stuck without a ride after his granddaddy's car broke down at the last minute, so he devised a strategy to get there without a ride, enlisting his brother and a friend to accompany him on the 6-mile journey. The dedicated act moved administrators at Harris-Stowe State University to offer him a full ride scholarship. Xavier's scholarship will cover tuition, fees, book expenses, and this is according to that report. Big story in St. Louis, and definitely went viral. What a determined young man, yeah?
Determined young man, this is awesome. I mean, look at what the things that we do in pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? You know, he knew that his future, the next step in his future was on that graduation stage and was determined to get there.
And
I think this is beautiful.
And just a little nugget, he wasn't quite sure where this university was located, so he Googled it, and he said if he didn't have a ride, he could walk his way, he could find his way to this university in regards to just celebrating the scholarship. So you talk about, determination times 10. He's definitely got it, and the future looks extremely bright for this young man.
That's right.
Indeed.
Well, legendary hip-hop DJ Grandmaster Flash has recently been honored in the Bronx with an honorary doctorate in music.
Yeah, Grandmaster Flash of the hip-hop group Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five received his second doctorate at Lehman College.
The hip-hop legend posted, Dr. Grandmaster Flash, honored to receive my second doctorate from Lehman College, and to address the class of 2023, go do great things. Lehman College is known as the Bronx premier senior college of the City University of New York.
Jessie Maple, a pioneer in the film industry and civil rights movement, has died at the age of 76. Her death was confirmed by her loved ones in a statement released by the Black Film and Center Archive. Maple was the first Black woman admitted into the International Photographers of Motion Picture and Television Union. After her admittance, the union had Maple blacklisted by studios, which resulted in her filing lawsuits against media conglomerates like ABC, NBC, and CBS. Her work as a cinematographer and director is immortalized in her 1981 independent feature film, Will, one of the first Black female directed films released in the post-civil rights era. My goodness.
Wow, what a champion. I mean, look, we sit here because of legends, pioneers, brave souls like her. As you were sharing a little bit about her history, I couldn't help but think about, directors like Ava DuVernay, right? The art and the career of the Ava DuVernays wouldn't have been possible without her.
Speaking of which, she was the first Black female to complete a feature-length film, and she was all about Black representation, which is why she was blacklisted a lot. But she continued to push through, and she was able to put together a myriad, a beautiful body of work of documentaries that she wrote and produced and filmed. And so, I had to dig a little deep because she was new to me as far as a name, but that just shows the wealth, of our history, those known and those who kind of maybe lie, if you will, up under the radar. So just a wonderful story, and she will definitely continue to be remembered as a trailblazer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also thinking about, Lisa Cortez, who's the director of the Little Richard documentary that just came out this year. I mean, there's so many Black films, so many Black directors where their work would not be possible if not for her.
Yeah, and then you can shift to the living legends, like a Grandmaster Flash, who is the epitome of first generation hip hop. Or I don't even know, maybe he birthed the generation. He's a part of the forefathers, if you will. And, fast forward, and we're celebrating 50 years of hip hop, and those who laid down the foundation and put it together, coming out of the disco era, are still with us to celebrate this 50 years. And this is a genre that they thought wouldn't be around. Folks hated, politicians, Black folks, older Black folks who didn't understand what rap music and the hip hop culture was all about, hated on the genre. And now it is here in a very different way, because some of these new rappers and stuff I don't quite understand, but just the history of it all. So, to balance out this chat with, a trailblazer who folks will now be living in her legacy, and with a trailblazer who's still with us that we can celebrate and look at the fruits of his labor as being one of the forefathers of hip hop is just amazing.
Well said.
Yeah.
Well, coming up, FUBU owner and Shark Tank investor Damon Johns is in dangerous waters.
What? We'll tell you why he had to file a restraining order against a former contestant of the show. Oh no. Those stories and more when we return. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report.
Welcome back. Well, there was a call to action to stop gun violence in Metro Atlanta over the weekend as community members came together to remember a slain teen.
Yeah, people packed Jackson Memorial Baptist Church Saturday to remember the life of Breonna Powell. That's a 16-year-old who was shot and killed, and another teen was injured at an unauthorized graduation party at a local high school.
Rappers Young Dro and Lil Baby took to the podium pleading for everyone to put down their guns. police have not caught the shooter. Crime Stoppers is offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to an arrest.
You know, and it reminds me of remember the Sweet 16 party, fatal mass shooting down there in Alabama. And these young people, we've talked about the effects of gun violence and how the medical community is calling it an epidemic, and how these young people are just eliminated. They are being taken out. You know, you don't come back. When they should still be able to celebrate and bask in these milestones that they reach, a Sweet 16, a graduation. It has just become overwhelming. Taking it back to the top of the show when we were talking about the young mother in Florida, now gone. So overwhelming, but at the same time, you kind of have to muster up this strength to keep fighting and to keep putting these policies in place to keep on top of the heads of these politicians and folks who are responsible for passing laws that will hopefully alleviate and or address what is happening here. I think we're losing like a whole generation of folks. I really do.
I think you're right. I mean, think about how many stories we report on every single day that are extensions of this epidemic of gun violence. Every single day, and these acts of violence, they change families forever. They change communities forever, right? And we may move on to the next story, but you got somebody sitting there in the house, with one less person at the breakfast table, or at the dinner table. And so, the effects of this are real. And we've got to do something about these assault weapons that are on the street. We got these babies that are, not old enough to drink, but old enough to have guns, dangerous guns that kill lots of people in seconds, right? We have these assault weapons on the street, and we also have a culture that has a tendency to glorify gun violence, right? And so, people, get mad and lose a dice game, as was the case with Takeoff, and you kill somebody.
Yeah, I hope as a culture, as a people, we are not becoming numb because of the frequency of these type of events. I hope we're not becoming numb and just, scrolling past and keeping it moving. Yeah. Because, the pain for those families and everybody involved, it never goes away. It may subside, but like you said, that emptiness and that pain, it's ongoing for forever. It really, really is. Yeah. Having experienced that myself. So. Yeah. Just can't become numb to it.
No, I feel you. Daymond John, one of the investors on the TV show Shark Tank, is filing a restraining order against a former contestant. Bubba Baker is a retired Pro Bowl football player who first teamed up with Daymond John in 2013 for a food deal involving baby back ribs. Baker and his family accused John of trying to take over their business and cutting them from profits. John is responding by saying that the family made poor business decisions and is defaming him on social media.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
Sounds great to me.
I know, very great. And I couldn't find enough to say, they're wrong, or he's wrong. Yeah. I just know that when, you go into business, it's a risk. I've seen Shark Tank on and off, and it sounds like the contestant gives up a lot to get a little, and so there's that. But this sounds like 23rd. Is that before? No, Shark Tank has been on for a while.
For a long time.
I want to say did they connect? Well, no, he was a contestant, but I don't know. Like, I don't know which way to go on this because it's a lot of gray, like you said. I tried to find something to kind of say, but there's nothing really out there to go on to support one side or the other.
Yeah, and maybe this is a cautionary tale for our soulmates. I don't know, who may be looking at going into business with Daymond John, but take him out of it, right? There are lots of Black businesses out there, small businesses out there, that are trying to scale their businesses. They're trying to, expand their businesses. And sometimes you get tangled up in a deal with the wrong person, or you don't quite understand the terms of the deal, or you say you're okay with somebody being majority owner of the business that you started, and then when they become majority owner and make decisions you don't agree with, then it's like, whoa, I have a problem.
Yeah.
So I don't know the details of this particular case,
right.
But if I had to speculate, I might think that, maybe it's door number 1, 2, or 3, as I just laid out.
Yeah, but in business is risky. So we'll just leave it at that and see what happens with this. All right, Abbott Elementary actor Tyler James, wasn't he the Everybody Hates Chris? Yeah. Williams is making headlines for the way he's handling rumors surrounding his sexuality. Williams shared a statement to his IG story. That was back on June the 4th, which began, quote, "Usually I wouldn't address stuff like this, but I feel like it as a conversation is bigger than me. I'm not gay, but I think the culture of trying to find some kind of hidden trait or behavior that a closeted person lets slip is very dangerous." He added that it also reinforces an archetype and says he aims to use his platform to push back against those archetypes, saying being straight doesn't look one way. Help us kind of break that down.
Good for him. Good for him. I mean, look, there are lots of demonstrations of what it means to be LGBTQ, right? And so sometimes people stereotype and say, well, if you put your hand on your hip, then that's a dead giveaway,
or
right?
If you dance a certain way.
Or if you dance a certain way, or if you're too manicured, right?
So do you know what prompted folks to assume that he may be gay?
I think there were folks on social media, that just started to speculate. And there was a particular post where someone tried to match him with somebody who is an openly gay artist. And I think that sort of went viral, and that's what sparked this conversation. He's never said that he's gay, although he's been very clear that he's an ally. And I think what he's doing, is the right thing to do. We are so quick to put people in boxes. And we forget that, sexuality is personal, right? It's fluid. Nobody owes you anything. Nobody has to tell you anything unless they're your partner, right? They don't tell you anything about, their sexuality. And he's claiming that. And I think he's doing it in a way that allows for more folks, whether you're LGBTQ or not, to walk with your head held high, right?
Sure.
I mean, again, how many folks have grown up being told that, this is the way that, boys act, this is the way girls act, this is the way men act, and this is the way women act, right? And, that sort of toxic masculinity in some cases can be very harmful.
You got 30 seconds, so I want to ask you this as we're inside of Pride Month. Have y'all added a letter to the Alpha, to the LBG? I'm seeing a lot going on. Help me, because I want to get it right, especially inside of Pride Month. I see a plus. And then have I seen another letter in there?
There's a lot of letters. LGBTQIA.
I'm an ally, but I'm trying to get it right.
Plus, right? Look, if you say an LGBTQ, you're doing all right.
That's all I got to say?
You're doing all right.
Because that's why sometimes I say just gay. Yeah. Because I don't want to miss out on the alphabet. Yeah. I don't want to miss out on what's happening.
There are a lot of folks under the rainbow.
Okay.
Yes.
You have to get that right.
Well, actor Cuba Gooding Jr. settles a civil suit on the same day the trial was set to begin. Jury selection was supposed to get underway this morning in New York, but a woman sued Gooding Jr., saying that he raped her in a New York City hotel a decade ago. The woman was suing for $6 million, but the terms of the settlement have not been made public. Lawyers for Gooding Jr. say that the relationship was consensual.
I found it very interesting that right before it hit, the story changed and they decided to settle out of court. And sometimes, keep information private to protect, parties at hand. Sometimes maybe settling out of court is the best, but it does kind of put this dark cloud or keeps the idea of innocence or guilt in this gray area.
Yeah, and it's just another reminder that, and I think this is sort of a cultural inflection point, that consent can be given or withdrawn at any time. And sometimes folks aren't very clear about it or clear with it. And so I don't know, but he seems like he got out of this in the nick of time.
Yeah. All right. We are clear that this next segment is our fave, Black Excellence, and we're taking it to the house.
That's right. That's Morehouse College. We'll tell you what this young man was able to do for the first time in over 100 years for the house. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report. We'll be right back. Jaylen Brown is Morehouse first journalism graduate in 156 years.
Brown is the first to do so since Morehouse was founded. This was back in 1867. So a professor did confirm that journalism wasn't available until 2021 when the college expanded the sports journalism minor into a major, centering on journalism in sports, culture, and social justice. Now, the new major became available after Michael Jordan and the Jordan brand made a $1 million donation to Morehouse as a part of the Black Community Commitment Program.
That's right. The Jordan brand donation helped fund scholarships for students like Jaylen. Morehouse officials say they are very proud, and might I add, so are we.
156 years, so it was a minor. You couldn't major in it. And thanks to MJ and his folks, now folks like Jaylen and those who will come after him will now get a chance to major in journalism. I love the emphasis that they've put on that.
Yeah.
And maybe one day sit here at the Fox Soul Black Report desk.
That's right. We'd love to pass the baton to them. And look at MJ sort of coming through again. Just
Okay,
bam.
okay.
Bam.
That was a nice J.
You like that?
Nice little jump shot.
I know what to do on the court. I know what to do on the court.
I'm just asking. For the full rundown on today's stories and more, you can access Fox Soul's video on demand on any of our partners. You can see them there across your screen. You can even access past shows and other Black-centered content, catch up on past Fox Soul Black Report shows. And don't forget, Soulmates, to download the Fox Soul app. Why? Because it's free, and then it's a way to stay connected 24/7. We got a lot going on.
Lots of good content there. It has been a pleasure to bring this report to the people.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes.
You act like you got to go catch a flight or something. It is only Tuesday.
No, I'm staying right here. Don't you worry.
We will, of course, be back again tomorrow. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nichols Corte on behalf of the entire team.
The entire
here at Fox Soul's Black Report. Because, you know, it takes a village to produce a Black Report.
Absolutely, it does.
I'm Nichols Corte. Stay lifted, y'all.
And stay safe. We'll see you again tomorrow.